Hello everyone and welcome or welcome back to my channel. More likely than not, welcome to my channel because I am a brand new YouTuber. In today's video, I will be covering the first three tiers in this iceberg. I found this iceberg on Reddit and it was created by a user awkward_AD3769. If you aren't familiar with icebergs, no, I'm not talking about the giant piece of ice that floats in the ocean. Instead, I am talking about this chart. Iceberg charts are just a collection of a bunch of information about a specific subject. As you go through each tier, the information gets less and less known by the fandom, or supposedly less and less known. The tiers in this iceberg have been titled Normie Sponge, Casual Sponge, SpongeFan, Sponge Addict, Sponge Enthusiast, Researcher Sponge, Extreme Sponge Addict, and My Life is All About SpongeBob. I will only be covering the first three tiers in today's video. I will create another video to cover the rest of them. I will not be covering every single entry in every single tier. I will be leaving out some that are too NSFW for YouTube and some that I believe may not be worth covering. If you are interested at all in any of these, I will leave a link below to the Reddit post where I found this iceberg and you can take a closer look at it for yourself. Now, without further ado, let's hop into the iceberg. Tier 1. Normie Sponge. First entry that I'm going to cover is Handsome Squidward. I feel like most people already know about Handsome Squidward, but I love it, so I just thought it would be perfect to throw in here. Handsome Squidward is a reference to what Squidward looks like in the episode The Two Faces of Squidward. In this episode, essentially what happens is there is an accident where Squidward gets hit in the face and he becomes handsome. As the episode goes on, he continues to just get hit in the face and he gets sexier and sexier. And then in the end, we end up with this sexy ass Squidward. Up next is My Leg. My leg is this phrase that is screamed by this random fish who actually has a name. His name is Fred. Later on in the series, in season 11 to be exact, Fred actually gets his own episode where his leg no longer gets injured and it is his goal to be able to get back into the hospital. The Battle for Bikini Bottom. This was a 3D SpongeBob video game that was originally released for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. There was also a 2D version that was released for the Game Boy Advance. The premise of the game is as follows. Plankton's robots have taken over Bikini Bottom, and SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy must stop them. A lot of people consider this game to be one of the best SpongeBob video games due to its gameplay, large worlds, how well it stuck to the source content, and its excellent soundtrack. Personally, I love to play this game. I have great memories of being over at my cousin's house and playing this game with them, trying to beat it and miserably failing. Up next is the 7 Deadly Sins. This is the theory that the main characters of SpongeBob are actually based on the 7 Deadly Sins, and if you're unfamiliar with the 7 Deadly Sins, here they are. Pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. I'm going to go ahead and go through each one, which character it represents, and give a little explanation as to why. Number 1. Pride. The character who is supposedly the embodiment of pride is Sandy. Pride is a deep satisfaction derived from one's own abilities. If you know anything about Sandy, you would know that she is very prideful in herself. She takes great pride in her work, in her homeland, in her abilities, and in herself as a scientist. Up next is greed, and I don't think anybody is going to be surprised by this entry. Mr. Krabs is the embodiment for greed. If anyone, this one fits him especially. Greed is the selfish desire for something. People view greed as the desire for wealth. Krabs obviously fits this perfectly. I'm not going to go too deep into himself, but he's just obsessed with money. He literally had his $1,000,000 framed. Now on to Lust. Lust, there are two characters who people typically push into this category. I feel like there's no one really who falls into Lust that much, but the two characters that people consider to be lust are either Pearl or SpongeBob. Pearl, I think, makes a little more sense strictly because lust is an intense sexual desire. It can also be an intense love desire, specifically with this show because we don't see a bunch of sexual desire within SpongeBob. I think Pearl fits the best out of this one because she is depicted often as boy crazy or lustful for popularity, and she's obsessed with those knockoff in-sync fish singing characters. SpongeBob fits into this one because he just has such an intense love for his friends, his family, his city, and just life itself. Up next is Envy, and I feel like this character makes the most sense for this one. It is Plankton. Envy can be described as an insatiable desire and a feeling of jealousy towards another person, either for their material goods or their general lifestyle, and Like I said, Plankton isn't a big surprise for this because Plankton is often depicted as deeply envious of Mr. Krabs and is constantly trying to get the things that Crab has, specifically the secret Krabby Patty formula. Third to last is Gluttony, and typically there are two characters who fall under this one. It's either Mrs. Puff or Gary. Gluttony is the overindulgence in food. Mrs. Puff is shown to love food. She loves chocolate and pasta and a bunch of things, and she also is big because she's a pufferfish. Gary can also be put under the category of gluttony because he's his pet snail, and really all he does all day is eat food. Next is Wrath, and Wrath is no surprise to be Squidward. Wrath is uncontrolled feelings of anger and hatred. Squidward is often shown to be very angry at SpongeBob or Patrick or literally anything and everything that happens in his life. Squidward is most definitely the most angry character, and he is constantly pissed off almost every episode. And finally is Sloth. Patrick is the embodiment of sloth. Sloth is excessive laziness. And again, I feel like this one isn't a very big surprise. Patrick is very, very lazy. He is unemployed. He literally lives under a rock. He sleeps all day. And if you remember in that one episode when him and SpongeBob do shared parenting, raising this baby clam, Patrick literally does nothing to help raise the baby. The next entry is chocolate. This is in reference to the Chocolate with Nuts episode. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are selling chocolate bars because they want to be entrepreneurs, but they are going from person to person, house to house, trying to sell these chocolate bars. Two super infamous scenes. We have the one guy who the whole episode is just yelling, "Chocolate!" And the other one is when they go to these two old-ass ladies and they're trying to sell them chocolate. And this is where these infamous lines were spoken. "They're selling chocolate? Aw, chocolate. I remember when they first invented chocolate. Sweet, sweet chocolate. I always hated it." There are just so many good scenes and quotes from this episode. Honestly, one of my favorite episodes. The next entry is titled "The First Movie is the Ending of SpongeBob." This is actually true. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie was originally supposed to be the finale for the entire series. The creator of SpongeBob wanted this to be the final, but Nickelodeon actually ordered more episodes after they had started creating the movie. This is no surprise on Nickelodeon's part because SpongeBob was making them so much money, so they wanted to keep him in there. But the creator of SpongeBob did not want that, so he actually left in 2004 when the movie was coming out, and then he ended up coming back to the series in 2015 until he sadly passed away in 2018. Up next is Red Mist. This was originally a creepypasta. In the creepypasta, the creator was claiming that he was once an intern working for Nickelodeon, and he and his team were asked to watch this episode titled Squidward's Suicide. He said in the episode, it shows Squidward preparing for and eventually performing a clarinet recital, and at the end of the recital, everyone boos him, and then Squidward gets this super cursed look on his face and then ends up dying via himself. So the Red Mist was originally considered to be a creepypasta lost media file. This was just proven to be fiction until there was this newer episode titled SpongeBob in Random Land, where SpongeBob and Squidward go to this place called Random Land, and the picture, the classic Red Mist picture, actually shows up in the episode. It's honestly a little creepy that the creators of SpongeBob decided to throw this in there, especially considering this creepypasta is about Squidward offing himself. Next up is the Wormy close-up. If you know SpongeBob, SpongeBob is infamous for its weird close-ups, and this one is no exception. If you remember the episode with Wormy, Sandy is going away, so she puts SpongeBob and Patrick in charge of taking care of her pet called Wormy. Wormy is actually a caterpillar, and if you know, caterpillars end up turning into butterflies. Patrick and SpongeBob love Wormy so much, but then Wormy ends up turning into a cocoon because he is a caterpillar, and then he turns into a butterfly. And SpongeBob and Patrick are absolutely confused. They think that this butterfly ate Wormy, when in actuality it actually is Wormy. And throughout the episode, there are these weird, straight up creepy live close-ups of a butterfly. And honestly, it freaked me and many others out as a child. And when the episode would come on, I would literally turn away when I knew that this close-up of this butterfly was going to pop up because it freaked me out so much. And this actually personally spurred me on to have a fear of butterflies almost all throughout my childhood. Next up is Rock Bottom. Rock Bottom is an episode that featured the town, you guessed it, Rock Bottom. Rock Bottom is a town that is in the aphotic zone. The aphotic zone is a zone in the ocean where there is little to no light in the ocean, and so there are a lot of interesting and different creatures living down there. Patrick and SpongeBob get off on the wrong bus stop, and SpongeBob ends up being trapped there. This episode just has a very creepy, kind of liminal feel to it. He is stuck there, and the entire episode he's trying to figure out his way out. Next up is the Just One Bite deleted scene. This is not a creepypasta, this was real life. This is a real deleted scene that was taken away from the episode Just One Bite. This is the episode where SpongeBob gets super thick because he eats a bunch of Krabby Patties, but before he gets thick and breaks into the patty vault, he first has to break into the restaurant, and this is where the deleted scene comes in. The deleted scene from this episode involves a trap in the restaurant that is trying to prevent people from coming in. The trap is the door has a can of gasoline on top of it, and when Squidward opens up the door, the can of gasoline falls on him, and then there is a match that comes out of nowhere and lights Squidward on fire. This was removed, I feel like, for an obvious reason. It was removed because people were scared that kids may try the same stunt. Next up, SpongeBob Popsicle. Yeah, these were the effing best. I love the SpongeBob Popsicle. I have so many fond memories. It was slightly cursed looking, but it was so satisfying to eat in the middle of the summer after chasing down the ice cream truck. And honestly, they were always like one of the most expensive popsicles on the ice cream truck, but I loved them so much. They had those nice gumball eyes. Just amazing. Glove World. Glove World is an amusement park that both SpongeBob and Patrick love to visit. It was first mentioned in the episode Rock Bottom. This is actually where SpongeBob and Patrick were coming from when they get stuck in Rock Bottom. I just wanted to include this because I think Glove World is so cute and I love the episodes that feature it. Next is the I Was a Gary deleted scene. This is in reference to some supposed lost media or a false memory that some people have about this episode. This is the episode where Gary is sick and SpongeBob has to inject Gary with some snail medicine, but there is an accident where SpongeBob and then Squidward turn into snails after accidentally being injected with the needle. The deleted scene never actually existed, but people believe that there was a scene of Squidward transforming into a snail, just like how there was an actual scene of SpongeBob turning into a snail. Next is SpongeBob. SpongeBob is the intentional misspelling of SpongeBob's name for a meme. You may be familiar with them. They almost always start with, "Aw, hell nah, SpongeBob," and then something that SpongeBob is doing. I love these memes. They are hilarious. Finally, in tier 1 is Wumbo. Oh, come on, SpongeBob. You know. I Wumbo, you Wumbo, he, she, me, Wumbo, Wumbo, Wumboing. We'll have the Wumbo, Wumborama, Wumbology, the study of Wumbo. It's first grade, SpongeBob. The next tier is tier 2, titled Casual Sponge. The first entry that I'm going to be covering is that Patrick and Gary are cousins. Yes, you heard this correctly. Look at this effing family tree. Read it and weep. They are cousins. Legitimately, they are cousins. I don't understand how snail and starfish are cousins, but apparently they are. Isn't it messed up that they're literally cousins and Patrick is a live talking person and like gets to live an entire life and Gary is a pet? What is going on here? Next up, A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants. This was a mockumentary that was never actually released, and this was to be produced by the company Regal Films. The description of the movie that was supposed to happen is as follows. SpongeBob lives above ground like all Hollywood superstars. Afraid that SpongeBob is becoming old news, his boss runs a contest called A Day with SpongeBob. The contest makes SpongeBob the talk of the town as thousands of kids enter to win. The lucky winner is Seth, and he is ecstatic about his day with SpongeBob. However, the day becomes a roller coaster as things do not happen as planned. This mockumentary was never released. Originally, they didn't want to release it because they were afraid of legal troubles. It never came to fruition in the end because they were never able to fulfill their crowdfunding goal. Up next is Squidward is not a squid. You heard this correctly. He is not actually a squid. Despite his name having squid in it, he's not one. He is actually an octopus. I'm not gonna lie, researching this iceberg was the very first time that I've ever heard of this, and I'm kind of shocked. You may be thinking, octopus literally has the prefix octo in it, which means 8. Octopi have 8 tentacles, and Squidward only has 6. Yes, this is correct, but apparently they just decided to drop 2 tentacles because this would make animation easier. Next up is that Mr. Krabs is Pearl's sugar daddy theory. The theory is basically just what the title of this implies. The theory is as follows. What if Pearl isn't Mr. Krabs' actual daughter, but he's her sugar daddy? This would explain why she calls him daddy and why all she wants from him is money to go shopping. This is literally the entire theory, but I don't believe it. There are many reasons why this doesn't make sense, but also he literally hired SpongeBob to throw a 16th birthday party for her. So number one, that implies that she is a minor. Also, there are so many references in the show to her being his legitimate daughter. There's a lot of other things that would prove this to not be true. So if you want to believe it, it's your prerogative, but I just don't. The next entry is Portrayed by SpongeBob. This is a reference to a meme format where basically someone just takes a subject and portrays different characters or things in their life with different screenshots of SpongeBob characters or scenes from SpongeBob. Up next is the Alaskan Bullworm. This is an episode featuring, you guessed it, the Alaskan Bullworm. The Alaskan Bullworm is a giant pink worm monster. It is big and scary and pink. SpongeBob believes that he has just seen the Alaskan Bullworm and the town goes into a frenzy. Sandy believes that she can wrangle it just like the bulls that she wrangles in Texas. However, the whole town is trying to convince her, hey, this thing is big and scary, there's no way that you can wrangle it. While Sandy is trying to wrangle it and SpongeBob is trying to stop her, Patrick and the citizens of Bikini Bottom decide to, and I quote, take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else. Eventually, Sandy and SpongeBob lead the worm into Abyss, and the town is saved, and it is now canonically in a different geographical location thanks to Patrick's suggestion. Next up is Pamtree. Pamtree is a YouTube channel known for creating disturbing videos filled with dark humor, and it has a very primitive 3D animation style. He has a lot of videos, but the one that I watched was actually his most recent upload, and it is titled Squirrel Jokes. Squirrel Jokes begins like the stand-up scene in the SpongeBob episode with the same title. However, it takes a dark turn when SpongeBob decides to release a toxic gas that knocks out the whole crowd, and then SpongeBob continues to put each person into a meat grinder. Needless to say, I did not watch any videos after this one. From what I could find on Reddit and different places online, Pamtree seems to be a little disturbed and is currently trying to work on their mental health. Next is the Neptune theory. This theory is that Poseidon was originally king, but because Poseidon didn't have actual powers and Neptune did, Neptune ended up overthrowing him and taking over the crown. Next is SpongeBob in real life. This was an art project, and people continue to make replicas of extremely cursed 3D realism art of the SpongeBob characters. With SpongeBob in real life, it gives the characters very real looking human skin texture, and it's honestly just really unsettling to look at. Next is SpongeBob Patrick. I love this one, and it's just this video of some kid showing off his different SpongeBob character figurines while singing their names as he gets to each one. It has gotten remixed a few times, and it's honestly kind of a bop. Next is I can't seem to get happy. Maybe this will help. This is in reference to a quote that Squidward says. In this scene, Squidward looks as though he is setting up a rope to hang himself, but then he ends up pulling up a baby clam in a cage. It's just kind of some dark humor in the show. Next is We Gotta Get SpongeBob Back. This is a fan-made episode of SpongeBob made by Joe here on YouTube, and for some reason SpongeBob is gone. The entire episode is just Squidward being totally unhinged trying to get SpongeBob back. The whole thing honestly feels like a fever dream, and it's pretty bizarre. Next is the Magic Conch Shell. Magic Conch Shell. Will I ever get married? The Magic Conch Shell is a Magic 8-Ball-esque device that appears in the episode titled Club SpongeBob, and it is seemingly actually magic. In this episode, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward are accidentally flung into the kelp forest. SpongeBob and Patrick depend on the Magic Conch Shell to help them survive, whereas Squidward, in his natural grouchy state, he is very doubtful of their strategies and does not believe that the Magic Conch Shell is doing anything to help them. SpongeBob and Patrick ask the shell many questions and actually get helpful answers. The whole time, Squidward is being very doubtful and scowling, but once Squidward gives in and decides to ask the shell a question, the shell just gives him bad answers, resulting in Squidward getting absolutely nothing. We Have Come for Your Nectar is a meme. I will put it here on the screen. It's exactly what it looks like. There is a bunch of these fly bobs all around the meme, and Squidward is yelling at them, "Get the F out of my house." The final entry in this tier that I'm going to cover is the Ol' Reliable meme. The Ol' Reliable meme is a meme template using this scene from SpongeBob where SpongeBob is showing off his Ol' Reliable jellyfishing net, but instead of the net, the poster puts a meme. A lot of times they'll put something that is useful in their own life or something that they will like pull out of their back pocket at the last second to prove something wrong. The final tier that I'm going to be covering in today's video, part 1, is SpongeFan. Again, this is not the final tier in the Iceberg, and I will make another video covering the rest of them. The very first entry that I'm going to cover from this tier is Mr. Puff. Mr. Puff is exactly who he sounds like. He is Mrs. Puff's late husband, and what I mean by late husband, he is dead. Mr. Puff was turned into a lamp and is now being sold in the Shell City gift shop that is featured in the very first SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Up next is Mr. Crab overdoses on ketamine. This is a fan-based parody game where you get to play as Mr. Krabs and you sell drugs to other Bikini Bottom citizens in efforts to fund his own ketamine addiction, and the game is described on its own download website as such. Play as Mr. Krabs in this all-new, action-packed platformer. You will fight tooth and nail in order to make ends meet for your crippling ketamine addiction. A side note about this one is that a very well YouTuber known as Critical or Penguin Zero or Charlie posted many videos of himself attempting and getting a world record speedrun in this game. Next is Nosferatu. Nosferatu is a classic vampire figure who appears in the episode titled Graveyard Shift. This is the episode with the hash-slinging slasher if you're not familiar. In the episode, Nosferatu ends up being the one who was turning the lights on and off again. Nosferatu! Me and my friends and family always quote this one line. I have no idea why, we just think it's so funny. Encyclopedia SpongeBobia. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a giant encyclopedia that covers anything and everything SpongeBob. Its self-proclaimed goal is to create a central information database for everything SpongeBob SquarePants related and to make this the most accurate and largest SpongeBob SquarePants information database. Squidward is a talented artist. Well, art is subjective, but honestly, Squidward is quite the renaissance man of art. He plays clarinet, paints, dances, sculpts, and can sing. Well, he can sing very off key. Some, and honestly myself included, believe Squidward to actually be a very talented artist. The problem in the show is that pretty much everyone in Bikini Bottom just don't get it. They don't like his art, they think he's bad at it. Next is the disgusting close-ups. Remember Wormy back a few tiers ago? Well, yeah. There were a lot more weird, freaky close-ups aside from that. Some were real-life close-ups such as Wormy, but others were odd animated close-ups of items or characters. Specifically, there's this one random close-up of Patrick's leg hair. I have zero idea why. There are also a lot of weird close-ups of gross Krabby Patties or SpongeBob looking extra disgusting. Next is Kid drowns after trying to find SpongeBob in the gang. This is not real. There were these fake rumors going around on an email chain in the year 2002. There are several variations of this rumor, but the gist of it is that some kid was on a boat and decides that they want to go visit SpongeBob, so the kid jumps off the boat and then subsequently drowns. Again, these were just rumors, and it did lead to a few freaked out parents who stopped their kids from watching SpongeBob in fears that they would be stupid and try to go find SpongeBob in the ocean, but it just wasn't an actual story. Intertidal Zone. This was a comic book that SpongeBob's creator Steve Hillenburg created while he was teaching at the Ocean Institute. He made it to, quote, help explain the life of organisms living in the tide pools along the Southern California coast in an entertaining way. The book was hosted by this early version of SpongeBob, who was adorably named Bob the Sponge. Now we can see where SpongeBob got his name from. Get lost, Squidward. This is a quote from the movie Avengers: Infinity War. In the movie, Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., says this to Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw is an alien villain who admittedly does look like an alien version of Squidward. Cartoon Beatbox Battles. Cartoon Beatbox Battles is a series on YouTube produced by Verbal Ace where, you guessed it, cartoon characters battle each other via beatbox. There also is a little bit of rapping involved. SpongeBob was actually a part of the very first battle, which was posted to YouTube on March 19th of 2016. In this first episode, he faced off against Mickey Mouse, and SpongeBob actually appears in several episodes preceding this one and has even gotten a few of his original videos remastered. George and the Gorilla. George and the Gorilla appear in the episode titled I Had an Accident. This is the episode where SpongeBob ends up like staying inside for a lot of the episode. This is where we get the classic song, Indoors, Indoors, you know, where he has like his pal, the chip, and the penny, and the napkin. First, we're going to address the gorilla because he is the first one to appear. I'm pulling this directly from the SpongeBob wiki page because I couldn't word this any better. He first appears disguised as Patrick, stuffs the real Patrick and Sandy into a bag, and then attacks them, which makes SpongeBob finally go outside to save them. The gorilla then grabs SpongeBob and tears him in half. SpongeBob apologized to Patrick and Sandy for causing everything, declaring that he is no longer scared of going outside but is now terrified of gorillas. They forgive SpongeBob and say that they are also terrified of gorillas. This is then where George comes in. SpongeBob asks the gorilla what he's doing underwater because obviously gorillas don't naturally appear underwater and he doesn't have a bubble around him like Sandy does. The gorilla panics and then calls George over. George is a horse. Gorilla then rides George into the sunset and the episode ends. George the horse never makes another appearance in the series, but Gorilla appears in 3 episodes after this one. Blink 182. This refers to an actual piece of lost media from 2005. For over a decade, there was this hunt for a All the Small Things by Blink 182 music video that was originally featured on MTV. The thing that made this video special was that this music video was not the normal one, but instead it was the song that had a video of different 3D scenes of SpongeBob and SpongeBob characters dancing and doing things that went along with the lyrics to the song. Like I said, this was an actual real video, and eventually someone found it going through different VHS tapes that they had taken of MTV in the mid-2000s, and you can actually watch this video here on YouTube now. The video is such a perfect time capsule of the mid-2000s. Even better though, someone took this song and remixed it with the SpongeBob Patrick video that I referenced in a few tiers back, which it's just literally amazing, and honestly, it's even better than the original music video. It all started when I was born. I'm gonna warn you, this is gonna be kind of a long entry just because I feel like there has to be more background knowledge. It all started when I was born is a quote in the episode SquidBob Tentacle Pants. In this episode, Cindy has this machine that can transport things. Her machine goes haywire when she's trying to transport SpongeBob to the Krusty Krab, and she accidentally fuses SpongeBob and Squidward together. A lot more happens throughout this episode, but at the end, they are all at Squidward's clarinet concert, and the crowd absolutely hates his performance. However, when the cloak that he is wearing that is hiding the fact that he is fused with SpongeBob comes off, the crowd loves it, and Squidward feels like a star. But then Sandy appears with her fixed machine and unfuses them, which results in everyone getting bored and leaving. Squidward begins toying with the device decides to try to refuse him and SpongeBob so that he can get popular again. However, due to the unreliability of Sandy's science, the machine goes haywire yet again, and there is this huge flash on the screen. The scene is then cut to show Squidward talking to a shrink, and he is asked where all his problems began, to which he responds, "It all started when I was born." The camera then pans out to show this nasty-ass fused blob version of all of our beloved SpongeBob characters. The art of SpongeBob. I'm not gonna lie, this was a little difficult to find information on what this exactly was, but I'm assuming that this is in reference to the Twitter and Discord pages, which are titled the same exact thing. These two pages are dedicated to posting production art and various other SpongeBob related things. Censored scenes in the UK. I got this list from a website, which again I'm going to post below. There are several scenes in the UK that have been cut out for honestly good reasons, and we will go over which ones those are. Number one is from the episode Scaredy Pants. Scaredy Pants, they cut out the scene of Patrick shaving off SpongeBob's sides with a razor. In the episode Jellyfish Jam, they cut any scenes or slowed down scenes of flashing lights. Presumably this was to avoid people having seizures if they had epilepsy. Next is Pizza Delivery. They cut this one quote from Squidward saying, "Work? Oh, my aching tentacles." I have no idea why this one would get cut out, but it was. In the episode Hooky, they cut the scene of Patrick with 9 different hooks in his mouth. Episode Jellyfish Hunter, they didn't actually cut anything, but they decided to just not show the scene where the mysterious guy who's following SpongeBob cuts the fuses, and instead of showing it, they just show the outside of SpongeBob's house and they play the audio. And out of the picture, they cut the part where the art appraiser is pretending to hang himself. I'm assuming they decided to cut a majority of these scenes in an effort to try to avoid any potential copycat injuries from susceptible children who may watch the scenes and decide to try it out for themselves. Squidward on a chair. This refers to a YouTube video uploaded by user Casterio, which is titled the same exact thing. In this video, it is playing the Bon Jovi classic Living on a Prayer chorus, except when it gets to the actual part where they say, "Living on a prayer," the user sings, "Squidward on a chair," then inserts this infamous picture of Squidward on a chair. SpongeBob Eaten Alive. This is another weird, slightly disturbing, very primitive 3D style animated video. It's just kind of weird. You can watch it yourself. Spongepedia. This is yet another SpongeBob-centered internet encyclopedia, just like the Encyclopedia SpongeBobia. It's basically the same thing. Plankton Got Served. The episode One Course Meal was originally supposed to be titled Plankton Got Served. However, this is not the only thing this entry is referencing. I'm going to end this part 1 video by reading this creepypasta that is based off this episode / change in episode title. Alright, and without further ado, here is the reading of Plankton Got Served. I'm sure many have heard of lost episode creepypastas. They are usually an incredibly graphic episode that conveys such fear for children that was never aired, though someone managed to sneak it in a viewing or owns one of the tapes. Of course, all of these creepypastas are false, yet I remember a SpongeBob episode that was heavily altered, but still remains in circulation today. This is One Course Meal from season 7. In the episode, Mr. Krabs finds out that Plankton is horrified of whales and uses it to his advantage. This is one of the least popular episodes in the show due to the dark nature of the episode, even after the episode was heavily altered. Now, how would I have seen this episode before it was edited? It's simple, really. This is one of the 7 SpongeBob episodes that was revealed on the internet before it aired on TV. Always a big fan of the show, I was excited of the idea of having SpongeBob episode premiere on the internet before television. I rapidly reloaded the Nick page, and finally the episode came up. It was known as Plankton Got Served, though it eventually changed. Most of the episode is identical to the one that is circulated today. Plankton manages to break into the Krusty Krab and ties up Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob. As he is about to finally get the secret formula from SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs' daughter, Pearl, walks in. This terrifies Plankton and causes him to run out. Plankton later claims his ancestors were eaten by whales, and that's why he fears them so. Mr. Krabs realizes his fear that Plankton has and decides to use it against him. He dresses up as his daughter and begins to follow Plankton around, frightening him. Plankton decides he can no longer take it and decides to take the ultimate decision. Plankton decides to off himself. Yes, this is still in the show today. You're free to watch it. Plankton waits for the bus as he lies in the street waiting to get run over. That is when SpongeBob comes over and tries to convince him to continue his existence. This is where the alteration in the versions begins. Plankton fails to heed SpongeBob's words and remains there. In the altered version that was shown, SpongeBob tells Plankton that it was Mr. Krabs as Pearl the entire time and he gets up. In another altered version, SpongeBob says the same things, but Plankton refuses to believe him. SpongeBob decides that the only thing he can do to show him the truth is to drag Mr. Krabs outside. Soon after he leaves, the typical red bus comes speeding along. Plankton sits up and watches it hit him as everything fades to darkness. Plankton finds himself standing on a single platform overlooking darkness. In the darkness, he sees whales all looking up at him. There are members of his family he can faintly make out, calling for him to jump down. Plankton looks above and sees a light he can scarcely believe. This would seem to represent heaven and hell. Plankton, resigned to his fate, jumps and plunges down into the darkness. This is where the episode ends and the traditional credits are shown. parallel to Plankton's descent into darkness. Now, some of you may say you saw the show as soon as it came available online. Apparently not fast enough. After seeing the episode online, I reloaded the page to find the altered version shown on the website. I kept reloading, curious of how I had seen the first version. The only answer I could imagine from my viewing of the original episode was that the creators uploaded the wrong file, and moments after uploading it realized it as such. I may be the only one who saw this version. I truly do not know the sick ambitions that creators of SpongeBob had in mind with this episode. Why would a kids show portray death? Why would a kids show portray heaven and hell? Nonetheless, the unaltered version is impossible to find. I've searched as hard as I can, and I've failed to find anything legitimate about the episode I had seen. People told me that I had only seen the altered version, and they were too surprised of the dark themes portrayed in the episode. Nonetheless, I know what I saw. I know people would fail to believe me. People accuse me of just trying to scare people. People would say I have no evidence. There were no photos. There is no video evidence of this occurring. I only saw it once, and it never occurred of me to do such. I know the truth, and I want other people to know as well. And maybe, somewhere out there saw this episode as well as I, and can confirm it. Until then, I hope you enjoyed reading about my experience. That was Plankton Got Served. Like I said, that's the very last entry that I'm going to cover for this video. However, I will be uploading a part 2 to cover the rest of the tiers that were not covered in this episode. Again, a huge thanks to the Reddit creator who made this iceberg and made this video possible in general. Thank you all so much for sticking around all the way to the end of this video. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below what your favorite episode of SpongeBob is. I will see you all in my next video. Thank you so much. Bye!